Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
This episode is brought to you by Beachworks Fuel Systems. If you need to get any fuel system parts for your car, go to beachworks.com. I'm your host, Con John Turk, and on this episode of the Blind Apex Podcast, my guest and I are going to pontificate a little bit, sort of around the closing of my show. If you've ever stuck around long enough, you'll hear work on yourself, work on the car, let's get faster. But it's not that easy sometimes. So joining me, instructor, nationally competitive Honda Challenge driver, recreational kart racer, influencer, YouTube extraordinaire, Instagram. He's a program manager, engineer, and into mechanics. Dillion, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Good. It's a Sunday night after the Summit Point event for me, so I'm a little sunburned, a little tired. I spent a week wrenching on the car pretty much last minute. I also had to fix my truck, which was a show, because it threw a default code that would put it into limp mode any minute, 4 days before the event. So spent a lot of time spinning wrenches.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But what have you been up to since the last time you've been on the show?
I don't remember. I think the last time I was on the show was sometime when Manny was going to comp school in my car. So I took time off between Manny's completion of comp school and the start of this season, mainly to relax and focus on some personal endeavors, further education and career stuff. And it's been nice. It's been a nice, relaxing thing, focusing on a little bit of fitness as well. And I started doing rental kart leagues. So I did a rental kart league towards the end of the year last year, and then I started doing one at the beginning of the year this year. We went up to this indoor karting facility over the off season a couple times, and it's a really cheap, great way to get some seat time, and it's more exciting than a sim, in my opinion, even though I do have a simulator. And I actually did build a sim during the off season, like one that's not made out of pallet wood and rotten wood from behind a condemned building, which is what my old one was.
Some washing machine parts and stuff.
No, that's too advanced for EJ2 track revision 0. The first sim that I had was made out of pallet wood, refuse wood from behind it wasn't even a storage unit. It was terrible. It was like a condemned building, but and then basically put like a Gran Turismo steering wheel on it, and then my friend Alex gave me a Subaru seat, and then I strapped it to that assembly that I made, and so I actually have a real sim now.
Right.
And then this year, I'm not racing a full season of anything in cars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused on saving money and recouping a little bit of funds after making a run in 2023 for national championships with NASA, and just focusing on sort of like trying to put myself out there in more of a diverse manner so that people will see that EJ2 Track Rad is more than just a person that can drive a Civic and work on a Civic and engineer stuff for a Civic and race in Honda Challenge with a Civic, and also someone who is a capable instructor and knows how to race karts and knows how to drive different cars in HPDE and stuff. And it's been, I wouldn't say it's been super eventful so far, but I've learned a lot. I've been learning, so that's exciting, and it's always good. It's always cool to get better as a driver and whatever else and whatever hobby or endeavor you're pursuing at the time in your life.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing a lot of work on yourself stuff. I mean, even even working to improve your education in general, to change jobs, improve jobs. You could take a pay cut as long as you can afford to race, but if it improves your standard of living, your quality of life type of thing, like that can immensely impact your driving too. So, kudos for you. I know 2023 was a push for you. So I want to talk about that. I don't know when we want to get into that, but things sort of evolved for you because you were more in the budget oriented range, and I think you went all in. That's how I would explain it.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I did my taxes last weekend. I sat down for like 5 hours and just went through all of the cells, the security statements for selling all the money that I
Right.
sold, like all the stocks and ETFs and to make that happen. And then that was a lot of money. And then I looked at the all the money that I made from quote unquote yard sales on eBay.
Right.
So yeah, I was definitely going all in. I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, economically, the rules changed a little bit, so you have to sort of declare that stuff, or they send you a 1099 for some of those. Well, did they send 1099s like Venmo, PayPal? Were they sending 1099 to
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, I mean, not to go too far down the
Yeah.
path, but they send you a 1099, and if you are operating a business, like if you are operating for profit, no profit, then yeah, you report it as that. But I am basically buying stuff for a hobby to keep the stuff on my own, and then so as a result, when I sell the stuff, I'm saying that it's a complete loss. Which, if I had an accountant actually look at it, maybe that wouldn't be completely accurate. But they had a $20,000 limit for that in 2022. It was deferred. They were supposed to implement that in 2022 or decrease it. Then they were supposed to implement it for 2023. They deferred it again. So 2004, the limit is now I think 6,000. 2024, the limit is now 6,000. Then after that goes to 600.
Okay.
So yeah.
They're trying to. So I'll tell everybody. I don't care. My accountant, because we have to have one, or we have marital disputes. So it's just safer that way. So we pay somebody to do it. When the rule came out about this whole like Venmo, PayPal, eBay's going to send you a 1099, the accountant immediately issued a statement to all of his clients and said, keep all your receipts, especially for major items that you may sell in the future, because we'll take the depreciated loss on it. If they're going to think that there's a gain, we're going to claim the loss. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. So, a little bit of craziness, but one of the theories that I have, and I think we've discussed it a little bit here and there, is that I believe you should drive a maximized vehicle. And that way you can only blame yourself. And it's sort of has changed. My opinion has changed on that a little bit. But in 2023, when you were doing your Nats run, I know you were trying to keep things on the hush, but some people put slow-mo on your YouTube videos, and I caught a glimpse under a wheel well. And I was like, that doesn't look like a normal shock that he was running in the past. So
yeah, no.
I know you were probably editing some of these things out, but I happened to catch a glimpse, and I was probably the only one that did. But you traditionally operate frugally on a budget. Well, if you're not on a budget, like, you probably have a problem. So when racing, but you chose to increase your budget and spend money. So, how did you come to that decision?
So realistically, it was just the kind of the cards that I was dealt. So I started in H4, and the car was not really super competitive because of the like really cheap, low buck nature of the program. And when I jumped into H2, I was like, well, there's a lot of stuff that changes. The brakes change. You can run fancier shocks.
And
You can now change the gearing and the transmission. You can run a VTEC motor, different types of VTEC motors.
I, I
And
believe you
so
were competitive, though.
sort of, I guess. If you put me up against Kreider,
I don't,
I mean, he won at national champs in
but
2019.
but
I was on the podium, but
I believe there was other things in the race program world that maybe you could have done that would have closed that gap. I don't know.
yeah,
But I understand that.
I needed a built motor at the time.
Yeah, I mean, if they're running built ones, like, you probably need them. But outside of that, I still think there were some other things. But naturally, the H4 to H2 conversion is going to take some. It's going to take parts. That's where you're working on the car, right?
Yeah.
You can have more fancy stuff. Some of us don't even have it. We still have H4 budgeted shocks. For those that don't know, what is it? $2,500 retail for the set? Is that the limit in H4?
I think it's below. I think it's below 4,000 or 3,000 actually.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Whatever. There's a dollar amount, and you're supposed to be below that. Some of us in H2 are still running that let's say budget type of shock or dampener because, well, I don't run shock, so.
Yeah. So, all right. When you're trying to develop yourself and you're trying to develop the car, like, so first of all, I don't think you should ever stop trying to develop yourself. The way that I treat driving is I take it really seriously. And I've learned by watching other people. So like I always set marks in my head. I'll watch a video and I'll say, "Oh wow, I need to be hitting brake markers like that." And then after I get good at laying down fast laps, I'll watch my own videos and say I'm off apexes, right? And then I'll watch like an IMSA race and I'll be like, okay, wow, those guys are really aggressive and I got to start practicing leaving less room. So there's always that target is always moving for me, which is why I like the hobby, is because it challenges you to keep reaching and keep reaching and keep reaching, and you just don't stop reaching. You never stop reaching. And so I don't think you should ever stop working on yourself as a driver. Now, where it gets complicated is when you're in a builder's class like H2 and you have to now build a car and build a driver. And the reason I say the situation that I was in last year was suboptimal was because I had, a wrinkled quarter panel, kind of like half-assed H2 car in 2022, and I knew what the faults were for the car, and I knew what money I needed to spend to get it to where it needed to be, and I knew what changes I wanted to experiment with because I have the butt dyno to be able to sense what the car needs to get better. And I'm also surrounded by people who are really brilliant, who are willing to give me their expertise and validate or turn down my hypotheses on the car itself. So if I said to, like, Jackie was my coach in 2023, low buck coaching.
And
she
Jackie's
said,
Corner podcast, if she'll put one out again.
yeah. And she said, so I would go to her and I would say I have this theory, and she would say yes or no, and sometimes we disagreed and sometimes we agreed, and she kind of helped me to develop the car. She was one of the people, and I had some friends in AER and some friends that had worked in race shops like Manny, for example, and I always knew what the car sort of lacked, regardless of whether or not I was performing to my potential as a driver. I always knew what the car lacked. So I never stopped working on myself as a driver, but I was very keen on what the car needed. And the reason I could sense that was because I started driving that car completely stock in 2015. So I had taken the car from a completely stock, Civic street car to something that is completely gutted, Lexan windows, cage, all that stuff. So I had felt every single incremental change in that car parts wise and what it did. So once you do that, it's just a matter of, well, what if I go a little more? What if I go a little less? And so you kind of like start to build this mental model, and it allows you to understand the deficiencies of the car so that you can build the car better. And the development of the driver never stops. It never ends. I'm so passionate about that. And that's also kind of an effect of being surrounded by really brilliant people and some not so brilliant, which is valuable if you're trying to be fast around the track sometimes. But talented people, is surrounded by, and it's just luck, really. A lot of it was just luck. And I learned through a lot of luck. And then so it's a balance, obviously, but I never stopped working on myself as a driver. And I'm naturally a tinkerer. I'm an engineer by degree, so I'm naturally keen to tinker with things.
So I'm not going to disagree with you at all about always working on yourself as a driver. There's so many aspects for each one of us, whether it's health and fitness or anything. Like you went and got extra schooling to, get more education and further yourself professionally, which hopefully will pay off for you in the long run and help you keep pushing yourself as a driver by having a better job, more comfortable job, whatever it is you were seeking by doing that. For me personally, I was fighting my car, and I had to figure out how to work on it, right? I had to figure out how to get it to turn. But in the meantime, I was like, okay, I need to work on myself and my own discipline to evolve my race program. So my discipline was really poor. I'd come off the track. I wasn't measuring anything. I wasn't doing anything. And it didn't take very long before I learned not everything I needed to learn, what I thought I needed to learn. And now I need to take the next step, right? Now the car's turning. Well, now I need to go and really look back at my data between the non-turning car, the turning car, and I need to look at where I need to push myself. I mean, it got me to the point where in our region, this weekend I qualified the top 5. So I was in the top 5. We were all within 0.7 seconds of each other in qualifying. Mm-hmm. So that's a big jump for me. I'm usually never that close, but mm-hmm. I had to figure that out and work on it.
Yeah, I was sort of blessed and cursed in a way, because I never really had the budget to go do racing straight off the jump, and I didn't have the money to kind of like do things the right way when I got into this hobby. And because of that, I surrounded myself with people who were like-minded, because that's what we do as humans, right? So like when I started doing this in 2013, autocross in Wisconsin. I was out there working at a batch chemical plant, as a co-op, and I was a college kid, so I had financed an RSX Type S with internship money. It's the dumbest thing, and I beat the crap out of that car. But I surrounded myself with people who were like, "Oh, you're not gonna drive that harder," just whether it was smart or not. I'm 31 now, and I was 20 back then. But I was surrounded by people who were like that, and so I'd be like, I need shocks. And they'd be like, no, you don't. You need to drive harder. And I'd be like, I need tires. And they'd be like, no, you don't. You need to drive harder. Even if I was right, I'd be like, no, you don't. You need to drive harder. So they took it to an extreme level. And then when I got to, when I came back home to the Philly area, I surrounded myself with more people like that. No, you don't need shocks. No, you don't need tires. No, you don't need horsepower. And, yeah, it's just that trend carried on for a long, long time in my life. I got to, mind you, when I did get the money to do stuff, I would do the upgrades and be like, wow, I noticed this or that changed, and that kind of built my toolbox up. But like I got I spent a bunch of time selling promo codes for Track Night America, and in return I got a ton of free track time. And so I spent so much time just driving around the track, and I'd be like, oh, you passed me because you have more power, or you passed me because you have better tires. And I surrounded myself with people who just wouldn't accept that narrative. They were like, no, you just suck and you need to get better. And I'd be like, oh, that's mean, but okay. And then when I got to NASA as a volunteer, it just cemented that even further. And that was it for me. Like, it was like running with the people who ended up becoming H4 at the time. We pushed each other to continue that with that mindset. Yeah, you can spend more money on this or that, but at the end of the day, like, if you're not a good driver, then what's the point of the sport? The point of the sport is to be a good driver. The cars are the second thing. The driving is the first thing. So, yeah.
I think you guys took this natural step going from the slower class of H4 to H2. But did you think that in H4, I'm gonna guess the answer, but did you guys think that you maximized yourselves as drivers in H4?
No, and I didn't maximize myself as a driver in H2, and I'm nowhere near maximized. I mean, like, so, for example, I learn I learn a lot every year of driving. And it's because, like I said, that target moves all the time, right? So, like, for example, in rental leagues, I'm one of the only people in the senior league that will use their body weight, laterally to shift the weight over the tires in the cart so I can get the chassis to turn the way I need it to turn. And I have to because I'm a little bit heavier than some of the other people. And it's an advantage. And then recently, my last race, I learned how to do fore and aft weight transfer, but deliberately on long sweeping corners, if that makes sense. So I was always doing a little bit of fore and aft weight transfer, kind of like as a side product of the lateral stuff, but I learned the fore and aft stuff. So, you'll talk to someone at the beginning of the karting season, and the first race was in the rain, and I just I completely decimated everyone. Regardless, whatever it is, it's a rental league, right? Like, okay, Dylan, shut up. It's not a big deal. But at the same time, you ask those people, right? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, he's fast. But then you go to the end of the league where I learned how to do the smooth transition between fore and aft weight distribution using my body. And I felt the tires slipping in the rear and then not slipping as I applied more rear bias with my body. Mm-hmm. That Dylan is a different Dylan. Right? So just because you watch someone who you think is in their prime driving H4, H2, Spec Miata, whatever, and you say, wow, they're really good. A year later, if they're truly doing their job and pushing like they should be, they'll be a better driver than they were when you thought they were in their prime. So, yeah, I don't think that any of us reached our peak in H4. I think we were all very far from it. When, I look at all the car room I used to leave in H4, and it's like, I didn't. What are you doing? You need to be a little bit more aggressive. So, yeah.
So maybe we'll get to this later, but I'm going to argue with you about H2 being a builder's class, but it's evolved into a very refined class, but I don't think it's a true builder's class because we still have horsepower caps and stuff, but we can argue about that later. But you guys naturally took the step to now work on your cars, and then at the same time, you went to work on your car and yourself as a driver and push for a national championship. And so my theory is it's sort of good to take breathers on being like overly critical on yourself and then go, okay, what can I improve on the car that will make me feel better, make it drive for me better? And then once you do that and it's driving better, then you can go work on yourself as a driver in the moment driving, and in that way you don't burn out, you don't.
I think that's great.
So you sort of like ratchet and step yourself, right? So you, and that's budget dependent, right? Like there may be years where you're like, there's no parts left, or all the parts are super expensive, or whatever it takes, right? Then you have to refine things with the car, with your program to make, once you get to a certain level, you only have tenths, right? And to find those tenths is very difficult.
Yeah, I know what my car needs to be even faster, and I could do that. I really could. Am I going to? No, not really. I don't, like unless we get 14 car fields in H2 again, like we did in 2022, up in the Northeast. Like I can't see myself spending the several $1,000s I would need to do what I know I need to do to make my car truly nationally
Okay,
competitive.
so,
Um,
so let me sidetrack you for a second, um, because you did spend the money, right? Well, you had spent some money, but you knew what to spend.
I spent as much as I could.
Okay, that's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
don't overextend, and I know you know that, and that's just me and my philosophy also. So don't overextend. That's, you know, we see eye to eye on that. But for me, you knew what your car needed because you had enough seat time. You had enough time, like you said, you worked on it from the time it was a, regular clapped out streetcar Civic, right? And you were daily driving it, and then
Yeah.
so you've been through every change, and you've learned from each one of those changes, right? So, and this is sort of where my philosophy is tweaked a little bit, in that, I believe you should address your vehicle in every aspects the rules allow you. Okay. So we're allowed bushings. Maybe you don't do all sphericals because budget doesn't allow, or it's not made for your car. But you know what? You make sure that you're not going out on junk bushings, right? Maybe you go to hard race.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to put a Moog part in for a while, and they wear out, but you need coilovers that are adjustable. Maybe you want to go from singles to doubles, and you go to a budget double setup and you learn how to do that. And maybe one day you go to a high dollar double setup, and maybe you think that's going to give you time. Did you have an estimate of how much time your suspension change last year was going to give you?
No, I had an estimation in the improvement in certain characteristics that were deficit.
Okay.
So one of which was rear droop. Um, the EG coupe is a little bit longer of a chassis than the Integras and the hatches that we typically race in H2.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the droop became a problem in the rear. So I knew that was one of the issues that I needed to address. And then also the balance between the compression and rebound. My builders had trouble getting right. And then even if you got it right for one track, it would change for another track. And I talked to Jackie about it, who works pretty closely with
Mm-hmm.
ANSI suspension in Florida, and we basically had like a discussion about like the pros and cons of like saving on the shocks and things like that. And I was like, I think that's what I need, and she's like, yeah, I think that's what you need too. So the whole thing, I mean, from H4 until now has been picking the lowest hanging fruit and going and grabbing those first. I don't know that you necessarily need to touch everything in the rule book. Like, so for example, you can do a block guard. I don't think that you need a block guard in even a built VTEC motor. Maybe you do. I don't know. I don't
I
think
don't.
you do.
It's
But like,
They made that rule because of some of the B20 problems. So
okay. Yeah, I don't know how much it's like whatever. I don't think that you need to touch everything in the car. I think you just need to know what the rules let you do, and then you need to say how much money do I have, how much improvement will I get marginally for each upgrade given that money, and then what's the best ratio? What's my payback? What's my ROI essentially for each mod that I'm
right,
doing on
and
the
not
car?
only that, but when you start looking at modding the car, uh would a set of $4,000 or $5,000 shocks net you what, half of that in seat time, or seat time in coaching, personal coaching, would get you?
Oh, this topic would be, this is great. So yeah, so I mean, if you're that, like, I have a really hard time sometimes instructing uh nowadays, and I say nowadays like I'm old, but I mean like I
You're
guess
just a
with
past
cars
30. You're
from
not ancient, okay?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like what I mean is cars from nowadays and students from nowadays because you know we live in like a society. The meme, right? We live in an instant gratification society, and these new cars are just so advanced. And so I have these students, and they're like, "Yeah, I really need to get a faster car. My car's not fast enough." Or they'll be like, "I need to get better shocks." I was having a conversation with this girl that I'm friends with on Instagram, and she was like, "I really need new shocks," and I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "Because like my car is I need to increase the rear spring rate because it's rubbing in the rear because I put bigger rear tires on it." And I was like, "Well, have you confirmed that your spring that you would need would be under damped based on driving experience or a dyno
Right.
plot?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, then the necessity is not there, right?" Like, so my necessity is a different picture. My necessity is, okay, maybe I'm a little bit down on power, but I see my cornering speed and it's keeping up with the guys who are the top pack in the
Hmm.
Northeast, right? And then I go into a braking zone or something, or I go over a curb and I'm like, I see something different here, and I see what it might be, right? That's the difference, right? Like, it's very obvious when you stop reaching for excuses. It's very obvious when you start taking the driving as seriously as it needs to be taken. It becomes so obvious. Like if you just spend 2 years, if you're an intermediate driver in HPDE, you just spend 2 years literally taking all of the money you would have spent on shocks and wider tires and lighter wheels and more power, and you just take all of that money, all of it, and you just put it to going to as many different tracks as you can go to, like that, you would do yourself such a great service. But I have a really hard time convincing people to do that. Um, it's because this hobby, if it were karting, the vehicle would be so much less sexy,
Right.
right? But because it's cars, the vehicle is like one of the biggest focuses. And while that's important, it's not the reason why we do this. If that was the reason why we did this, you could just go to car meets. So
So, okay. All right. Let's go down this rabbit hole because it's sort of like it's a competitive car meet because well,
yeah.
even karting. So let me tell you, I talked to DJ about going karting, and he was in the rental league, and now he bought his carts, and now his kids have carts, and they're going out and they're being competitive, and he readily admits that every year a chassis can come out, every year there's a new trick
Hmm.
something, and there's people who have
Hmm.
them. They have the best wheels. They have fresh tires every event. They have fresh motors every year or sooner. They have the brand new chassis, or a new boutique chassis company pops up and they start running it or something. Or they have like 6 carts in their trailer and they run them all in practice to see which one happens to be flexible enough for the conditions of the day.
Right. That makes sense.
So it's just like going to Cars and Coffee and going, "Hey, look at my Ferrari," right? Or it's for me, like we go to the track and it's like Bradfield's got the shiniest, cleanest, most ridiculous build in the world, and every time I'm just drool over it, right? And I can't help but have some envy of it, right? He does an amazing job putting that car together, and he's put dollars behind it, and he's put a lot of skill behind building it. He's done a wonderful job. H1 is definitely a builder's class, but
Yeah.
I can't help but go, well, I'm having brake problems. Maybe I need some shiny Paragons because this dude has got some, beast looking thing. And if it stops his TSX, it's got to stop my turd eighth gen Civic. So,
Yeah. I think that it definitely comes back down to the balance thing,
yeah.
right? Um, but I think that like if you are driving a car and you tell me that I'm having brake problems, I want you to, and I'm not saying I want you to do this now, but I'm saying like if you're my student, right? If I'm coaching you or something, I want you to explain to me specifically why you're having brake problems. Is it because you feel like for me, I'm an engineer, so I'll refer to my visual of what the pressure versus distance curve might look like
Hmm.
to me, right? So like for example, I have a pretty good foot on me. Like my foot is pretty good. I have deficits as a driver for sure, but my foot is pretty good. So I can feel a lot. And when I was on the stock type R brakes, I had the right pads. The pads were great, but it was the pressure is weird. Like so I was having this issue where if I didn't if I didn't approach the full pressure of the brake pedal of the brake system correctly, it could lock up. Now that yes could be a pad issue, so you could swap pads and try, but pads are expensive and testing pads is
Sure.
expensive. You want to know how? Because I've tested
Yeah.
lots of pads. So so it's very expensive. So if someone comes to me and they're gonna say, Dylan, I need new brakes because I'm locking up. I'll say, well, what does the brake trace look like in your head, right? Where are you locking up? Is it in the middle of the braking? Is it at the end of the braking? Are you turning while you're braking? Do you have ABS in the car? There's so many
Right.
variables. So like, if you're gonna tell me you need a part, I want you to be a robotic human butt dyno, if that makes any sense. I want you to explain to me in every single way, in every single nuance, how does that happen? Why is that a deficit for you? Because you know what my workaround was for years when I was on for a year, sorry, when I was on those Integra brakes, it was to modify the brake pressure curve. So yes, the pads weren't ideal, but I was spending on other things in my life, and I said, okay, I figured out that if I could get my foot onto the brake pedal so that it was maybe 80% of the maximum pressure that that braking system would take with the tires that I had and the rotor sizes and the pads, then I could ease into the
Hmm.
100%. So I could basically offset that excessive bite, that initial bite that the pad had, by easing into that brake. Now, is that fast? Could I lose 5 hundredths of a second, maybe a tenth at most, by doing that? Potentially, yes. But am I willing to spend $600 testing three different brands of brake pads with unknown wear rates and no guarantee on whether or not they're going to work? That's the kind of decision you have to make. You know what I mean? So that's why it's important to be a good driver, because if you are a good driver, you can avoid having to spend all that money on that minutia, right?
Yeah.
So,
And good for you for wanting to ask the questions, because even if you and I talked about, brake pads or what I should do, it's just um like a real dyno, everybody's butt dyno is a little different, right? And perception isn't always reality. So trying to get down to the crux of the actual issue is really important when you're doing a recommendation for something like that. So,
hmm
but
yeah, man,
uh,
for sure.
yeah, so I just yeah, getting through parts and working on yourself to me is a constant battle, right? So not not everybody has the same budget every year. I don't have the same budget this year as I've had in the past. I spent a lot of money building the car, so you know I don't have a lot of money laying around again, right? Got to pay myself back for spending the money that I did. So
hmm
and economically, it's not that great right now, in my opinion. I was just at the track. It was a pretty light session, so I'm pretty sure most people agree. We want to keep doing our hobbies, right? Which is going out and racing or doing track days or time trials or whatever. But at the same time, we have to strike that balance. So, really, I mean, maybe you look at not buying so many parts and maybe you worry more about focus on seat time or vice versa. Like, whatever you think the best bang for the buck is going to be, that's what I would do. But I'm pretty sure you'd agree with me that seat time is probably the best bang for the buck.
Seat time is important. I think that you have to so like I do like lifting for
Mhm.
fun. And there's a there's a guy whose name is Sam Solik. He's a influencer, and he's definitely like on some sort of performance enhancing drug for sure. But I was watching an Athlean X video, which is a YouTube channel with a guy who does a lot of like kinesthesiology videos on how to rehab shoulders and that your back because my body's falling apart. And he was talking about Sam Sulek, and he was like, "Say what you will about the guy, performance enhancing drugs or not, clean or not, but like he has an intuition about his body. And so he'll know, like, today I'm going to do limited range of motion reps, or today I'm going to do isometrics, or today I'm going to do full range of motion, but I'm going to do lightweight, and I'm going to do slow ascent, descent, or he'll do explosive stuff, right? Because all of that stuff provides different functionality for the muscle, right? So like, and I'm not an expert in this at all, but it all provides different levels of functionality for the muscle. So as a driver, you should have that same level of intuition about your own abilities and inabilities. And you should be able to say, like, when someone is telling you, no, seat time, seat time, seat time, you should be able to say, for example, if the seat time's not benefiting you anymore, you should be able to say, no, the seat time's not benefiting me anymore. And then you have to challenge yourself to find out what that next step is, right? Like, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to step away from the Civic this year, is because the competition that I faced in 2022 and 2023 in H2 was so good for a builder class that I really learned a lot. I learned a ton. And if I were to go race the Civic this year, I would put a bunch of miles on my Penske's.
Mm-hmm.
I would put a bunch of wear on my motor. I'd waste a bunch of money on tires, and I wouldn't learn as much. So if someone tells me, Dylan, you can learn something in the Civic, I'll tell you yes, but the marginal return on investment is smaller than if I were to take my completely stock BMW daily and drive that on the track, because now it's a different chassis where I'm learning about how the chassis, a different chassis dynamics.
Right.
It's a different drivetrain format. It's different. It's a turbocharged car, and you have to use different techniques to get it around the track. Same thing with a kart. It is McPherson. Yeah, most of the Beamers are McPherson, but they're really good McPherson cars, kind of like the FG2.
Now, it's not that bad. I'm figuring things out.
FG2 car is a good car. I like the FG2. I think, like, it's funny because, like, so you say H2 is not a builder's class. It is a builder's class. The problem is no one builds anything unique because everyone copies the fastest person. And the K-swaps have not really been working very well. Brent Bauer is the only person I've seen who's been making a K-swap that works pretty dang well.
Go look at
we
the
have
results this weekend. Because
did he win, or did Michaels win?
they swapped back and forth because Chris had some mechanical issues for our three races this weekend. But no, Michael Young in a new K-swap build on not the best shocks, dampeners, whatever. Throws down hard. So the K-swaps, there's nothing wrong with them, I don't think. So I'm just putting that out there.
Oh, so I was so look, the K-swap on paper is the way to go. It just makes more sense than anything else. The torque is just astronomical.
Yes.
The problem now is how do you make it work functionally all the time and not break? Because the B series stuff is really stout and it belongs in those older cars. That's why I'm saying I like the FG2 because it comes with a K series. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit harder on consumables, but it's a factory K series car. You know?
Yeah, I mean when you're the Integras are B native basically. All of them were essentially a B native at some point in somewhere in the world. So all those cars came with a B series. Even the CRXs had B series back in the day. So in Japan.
Yeah.
So yes, the B series is essentially native in Golden Era cars, and yeah, it's a K native car is better. But I mean, Brent was this weekend was like, you have the most horsepower in the field, you have the biggest tires in the field, you're running 17s. I don't want to hear anything from you, as his car like pulls like a freight train pulls, you know, and I'm like, I got nothing left. I'm doing all I got. I'll just keep working on me. I mean, I'm not the rules committee, but that I did. I went back into my data and was like, okay, I need to find half a mile an hour here and half a mile an hour there. That stuff's really hard to find, you know? At least for me.
Yeah.
It feels hard to find. I cannot feel that half mile an hour. So, you know, it's hard.
So do you think the FG2 is not a good car?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm not, because I'm still working.
It sounds like that's what you're saying, Con.
No,
That sounds like what you're saying, bro.
No. It's different, and I'm still working it out, right? And I'm working it out.
Okay.
Like you said, everybody usually copies, you know, the fastest person out there. And right now, that would be, who was it at Nationals? Why am I drawing a blank? Who had
for your chassis or for the
Nationals?
Schanfeld.
Okay, so everybody would follow Schanfeld's cookie cutter recipe for being able to produce a fast FG2, and I can tell you, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I don't believe that setup. Excuse me, I don't believe that setup can do it for a 40-minute race.
Gotcha.
I mean, and nobody that I talked to was worried about that. They were like, he'll fall off in 15, 20 minutes max. So, excuse me, everybody, I'm dying. I was sick all last week.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry, man.
That happens. So, yeah, I'm not cookie cutter, and I refuse to be. I need it to operate the way I need it to operate so I can drive it as hard as I can drive it. And that's sort of how we're looking at things. But some of the stuff we had talked about prior to recording was this negative feedback loop that you talked about. Oh, I'm going to have to edit some of that out. I believe that person, that weightlifter guy you were talking about, whether he's on performance enhancing drugs or not, still has that feedback loop, right? That's how he knows what to do. And I think we need to develop that as drivers. And most of us are our own crew chiefs. You know, we're obviously the car owners, you know, like we're not independently wealthy folks with people doing a lot of work for us. At least most of us aren't. I mean, I'm not knocking those who have that kind of money. Good for them. But when you wear lots of hats, you have to understand how all those aspects relate to each other, you know, and then how that relates to you as the driver, because you're also the mechanic. So you're the one fixing the car, updating the car, driving the car, getting the data on the car, reviewing data on the car. You're doing everything, right? You're your own engineer most of the time. Yep. So developing that negative feedback loop. I don't know if you want to discuss that or like explain how you were talking about it.
So H4 was an interesting way to do that at the time, because we were all building our cars from DE cars to competitive quote unquote race cars in the process of actually also racing each other. So Damien and Ken, I had so much fun racing those guys. That was just, oh my God, it was so much fun. It was so much fun because they were such good sports. They were so stand up about their programs, and we just learned a lot of racecraft, and we learned a lot, and we had fun. But anyway, so racing those guys, like, that negative feedback loop was pretty big, because I would say that I struggled to keep up with some of the parts that they were buying at the time. So like, I remember I think it was like at Watkins Glen in April, I came and Damien was rolling around paddock going click clunk click clunk click clunk. I'm like, this guy has a clutch diff, you know, like what the heck? And then I'm trying to keep up with Damien at Thunderbolt, and he's just pulling out of corners. He's like, "Oh yeah, I got a 4.7 final drive in my car." I'm like, "Bro, I'm still in the 4.2." And then Ken had a wing with the arrow in his car, and his car was just it was set up really well. Like at Lime Rock, I remember just not being able to catch him at all my first season, and so the negative feedback loop was I need to figure out how to make this car faster because I'm driving the crap out of this car and nothing I can do is getting me there. So it was a matter of finding parts that fit within that budget, that window that I could afford that would get me close, that would get me further there, right? Like closer to my goal. So um, I knew I couldn't afford I could buy a Nine Lives Racing wing, for example, right? And I could do the aero on my H4 car, and or I could spend the same amount of money, maybe a little bit less, on some Kingpin front lower control arm sphericals, the compliance bushings, and some PCI trailing arm bushings. And so that's what I did. So the negative feedback loop there was like I'm driving the crap out of this car, whether or not it's perfect or good by like Tom O'Gorman standards or something. I'm driving as hard as I can, and it's probably 90% of what the chassis can do. And like just based on talking to people and humbling myself and asking, hey, do I actually suck or is the car suck? And so the people would say, hey, the car sucks. You may suck a little bit too, but the car sucks more. So try this, and I would try that, and then it would get me more speed. And yeah, I would say in that feedback loop, the biggest way to make sure that it's working properly, I think, is to ensure that you have that intuition about yourself. And if you don't, right, like if you just think you're Delulu or something, like you should probably be talking to the resources that we have in our organization or in any organization that you're in. Like you should be talking to the fast people and you should say, what do you think of my driving? You should show them your videos. You should ask them blatantly, do you think I suck? Like you should be, because we need to have candid conversations if we're going to get better, right? We need to hold ourselves accountable. And if they're telling you like, hey, you're driving the crap out of that car, it looks really hard to drive, right? You know that the next step in that negative feedback loop is, okay, I'm done with the driver development for a little bit. Now let's focus on the car. And then when people start saying, hey man, why'd you leave the door open in two? Or like, nice job missing the apex 3 times in a row. Then you say, okay, it's time to leave the car alone a little bit, go back to the driver, right? And always be open to criticism, whether it's from people that you hate and don't like, or it's people that you're best friends with. Be open to the criticism and the feedback, because that's the only way that feedback loop is going to work.
Yeah, they may not like you, but if they're giving you criticism and it's founded, I mean, it's not that hard to validate, right? Then it should still motivate you. Like, even if it comes, you could watch some of my videos and be like, Han, what are you doing? Why do this? Try this, and I'd be appreciative of it, right? But even if it comes from, the enemy, right? Or the frenemy, okay, it's still valid. It's at least worth self-reflecting on to make sure that you're not doing something out of bounds, right? And that maybe it is helpful. So,
I feel like a lot of the people in the sport are professionals and they are white collar, a lot of them, or they're business owners, and they're afraid to break that professional mold. They're afraid to break that politically correct or professional mold or vanilla canvas, right? They don't want to break through that mold. And sometimes I think you need to, because like I used to play ice hockey and roller hockey when I was little, and there was no professional mold. Right. It was like, hey bro, you suck. And it was like, no, I don't. It was like, yeah, you do. You just let in 3 goals. Get better, right? And so I'll play that game with myself. I don't tell people that they suck unless they're my friends and we're just messing around. But like, I'll play that game with myself, right? Like, so I will, in my car sometimes, I'll just be thinking about different drivers, and I'll be like, are they better than me? Are they a better driver than me, right? And then I'll think about them. I'll start rating them. What do they do well on braking? What do they do well in traffic? How do they handle offline situations? Things like that. And I'm like, they're good here, they're bad here. And sometimes I'll conclude, like, that person's a better driver than me. Like, I was thinking of one of my friends recently while I was driving to the karting league, who, I was thinking of Ken Martinez, and I was like, when he's in his prime, I think Ken might actually be a better driver than me. Like, I was like rating him in my head. I was like, he might actually be better. And then that gives you that fuel, that food to go fight to become better than that person, right? Like be candid with yourself. You don't have to be breaking professional molds and telling people they suck to be honest with yourself. Just ask yourself the honest questions. Am I really good? Is that person better than me? Am I better than them? Because it's a sport. It's for competition. You're trying to
Yeah.
win at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
a little bit intense. I apologize if
No,
I'm,
you're good.
but that's how I am sometimes. So
It's fine. Be intense, my man. Uh, Everybody has
yeah,
to find that in them, or I mean, we're racing. There, if you don't have a little intensity, a little alpha dog in you, like you may not be racing is probably not for you. There you have to have
yeah.
that oomph, that drive, that passion, that zeal. So
I just wanted to be kind of like be candid about that specific kind of like soapbox I just jumped up on because I do instruct with
mhm.
NASA, and I do treat my students with a lot of respect. I will say I spend less time being competitive and showing them the competitive nature of the hobby, and I spend more time showing them the intricacies of the chassis dynamics, how the car handles, how to modify your inputs as a driver, giving them symbolism and analogies to try and show them how to adapt themselves, and also being a little bit of a therapist, um, breaking down the walls so that, hey man, like honestly, like you're better than you think you are. I think the reason why you've messed up that corner 7 times is because you're shaking. Hold your hand out for me. They'll hold it out and they'll be shaking. I'll be like, see? So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that people listening are clear that yes, I can be very intense, but when I'm coaching someone or helping someone, it's more about let's get down to the problem and let's solve it, and less about showing them the competitive nature of the hobby. But that competitive nature can be utilized as a tool to better yourself. Be candid with yourself. Be honest with yourself. You
true.
know.
Very true. Well, Dylan, I know you had an outline. Are there any other things you wanted to cover this evening?
Mm, no, I don't think so. Um, I don't know. No, probably not, man. Honestly.
Awesome, man.
You?
No, I think I'm good. I think we agree more than I thought we were going to agree, but such is the beast, right? Like, I mean,
Okay.
maybe not. I mean, you still call H2 a builder's class, and whatever. I think it's a balance of power class, but and I think that's a evolution.
HC, H, I'm not gonna say anything, but
No, no, do
yeah,
it,
I
do it. Get
have
spicy.
no, 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 no. It's not spicy. It would just be giving away
Okay,
secrets.
that's fair. Don't give away secrets. But,
Maybe offline.
Baker
Yeah.
won't tell me what hot tire pressures I should be running, so he forgot. So I'm just poking the bear.
Okay.
Christopher Michaels, like all the fast guys in my region are definitely willing to help. They've always been willing to help me and everyone else because they know the faster we get, the more they have to focus themselves. And you're right. Car counts are down. Things are a little different, and they want that competition because iron sharpens iron. We're only going to get better together. So uh,
I
I
agree.
appreciate
I
them.
100% agree.
And you should appreciate all your competitors that are willing to help you, whether it's bring you apart, tell you that you suck, or well, somewhere that you need to improve or could improve. Whatever.
I had Jan Wang hop in my car. He used to race H2 with
uh,
us. And one of the things I did in DE was I had a passenger seat in my car with all the same safety gear I
right.
had, and I had 75 wheel horsepower. I had a D15
Hmm.
B7, and I had Nitto NCO ones because they were cheap and
Hmm.
sticky. And I would just bring people out in the passenger seat, and I would be like, "Yo, tell me where I suck. Tell me where I can get better." And I had Jan with me one time, and he gave me some. He was like, "You are too mean to the car." He's like, "You throw it into corners, and you hit the brakes hard, and you're on the gas hard, although you can't really feel it because it's a slow car. But he's like, be nicer. He's like, be nice to the car. Treat the car nice. He's like, you still want to be fast, but be nice to the car. And then he's like, you have maybe 5/10 of a second left in this car, a Thunderbolt. And I was like, okay. And that was it. And yeah, if you can find that instructor, that person to hop in with you, or that third opinion that really clicks, that mental imagery, it's all about finding what clicks. It's about finding what works.
True that. Yeah, go out and find your people, man. Go find your race group. Go find your friends. There's lots of people in the paddock, and they spend a lot of time by themselves sometimes. So don't forget to be social, because everybody can help everybody. So
hey, if you want to come hang out in the paddock, and if you like cigars, I'm your guy.
Oh man, I need to go to the Northeast for a little bit. But all right, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.